Welcome to Winning Women Live, and another call and another truly inspirational guest. And as always, I'm incredibly excited because I so love doing these calls. So we're going to be chatting about well-being and how, as entrepreneurial women or women running our own businesses, we really need to make this an absolute focus in our lives, if we are to truly be of service to others. And it's a subject that's really close to my heart at the moment. And, if I'm honest, I did take very lightly until earlier this year when I actually manifested some personal health challenges myself. And in fact, this is how I came to meet Kate Fismer, who I am delighted to be able to introduce you to today. So Kate, as you know, from reading the blurb and the emails and the messages that have been going out, Kate is a naturopath. Kate completed her training at the University of Westminster, but her journey really started as a child because growing up, Kate's family always used complementary medicine to support her health and well-being, and this helped her to overcome severe childhood asthma. And then Kate discovered naturopathy after working in the PR industry and recognizing stress as a common cause of ill health for many people. And like many of us, her journey began to evolve. So Kate is absolutely passionate about supporting clients to discover their own health potential. And what she uses is a really individualized approach, and it's absolutely fabulous. Her special interests are reproductive and hormonal health, stress management, chronic stress, trauma, and sleep. And then since having her own daughter, she's also developed a special interest in child health too. So I know there's absolutely plenty here that Winning Women will be able to relate to. So Kate, welcome to the call.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Alison. I'm delighted to have been invited.
Oh, it's wonderful, Kate, and I've just been so looking forward to doing this call as well because, you've helped me personally on my journey this year so much, but through that, I've just learned so much myself, and I just feel that we need to be bringing this subject really to the surface for women in business. And one of the things that I've truly recognized is the fact that many women in business or entrepreneurial women, we've quite often come from a corporate background. And one of the things that we've done is we've brought with us our behaviors and our attitudes from that past life. And, one of the reasons that we wanted to go into business on our in the first place, one of the reasons would be that we wanted to live life more on our own terms. We were looking for more flexibility. But then bringing these behaviors and these attitudes, a lot of us are still finding that we're getting burnt out, we're getting stressed, and I now know it doesn't have to be this way. And, I'm on my journey of working on that. So, through my own experiences this year, and talking to other people about what I've been going through, I'm just hearing stories constantly. It's just like, oh, me too. So that's one of the main reasons I wanted to bring you to the call today. Yeah. But before we start really talking in any sort of detail, would you be happy enough to share with us a little bit about your story?
Yes. So I think your story definitely, like you said, resonates with so many people, and it definitely resonates with me too. And I think, health is a journey rather than a destination. So I think there's such a process of learning so much about ourselves and learning how we can support ourselves, and also through each other, through what we learn in the journey. So for me personally, obviously, when I was young, as you said, I had my own kind of health challenges, and I was lucky enough to very much have my parents kind of look at alternatives rather than kind of thinking, oh, well, we'll just try this. And it helped me so much, and it also obviously helped my family so much. So there was always a part of me that realised that actually there's a kind of inner sort of knowing within the body, or an inner sense about how we can kind of improve our well-being. And if the body's kind of given the right conditions and the mind's given the right conditions, that really it's just a kind of process of remembering or kind of evolving, really. So I think that's probably one of the parts of health and the journey to health that I just find so inspiring, is that actually sort of deep within us, I think our kind of body and mind really know what we need to do. And actually, when we find that there's kind of obstacles, it's almost a process of reminding ourselves or remembering what it is that we need to kind of tune back into. And for everybody that comes in many different ways. But for me, I see that that's very much a combination of sort of three key things. So that's, nourishing our body on a kind of biochemical level. So that's looking at food and how we can really provide our body with the fuel that we need to do what we need to do. But there's also the kind of mind part, and we kind of go into this sort of drive mode quite often, where we're just not really kind of paying attention in that moment, and we're just so busy looking forward and thinking what we need to do next. And actually there's something about a stillness and being able to create a stillness within the body that I've seen really creates that opportunity for people to heal as well. So I think the mind part of it's really, really important as well. And then the other side of it that I think is absolutely vital is the body. And that's part of it that is about being embodied, so becoming much more aware of our body, because we tend to just think of our body as this thing that carries us around life, and we sometimes forget how incredible and amazing and all the amazing things that go on in our body on a day-to-day basis. So actually I think sometimes that creating that more awareness of your body and your sort of structure through things like, yoga and exercise or walking or tuning into your breathing is such an important thing as well. And I guess in a way, like we touched on earlier, the journey is about getting to know ourselves as well. So the better that we get to know ourselves through our kind of nutrition and our mind and our body, then I think the better we can, work towards health and well-being.
I think one of the things that I would really love you to share is really your definition of well-being as well, because it's a word that is bandied around an awful lot in our industry. But I'd be really interested to know, what your personal definition is. No right or wrong here, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in all honesty, my definition of well-being has evolved very much as my journey has evolved as well. So I guess if you'd kind of asked me that question sort of 10 years ago, I really very much thought, well-being's all about eating the right diet and making sure that you exercise. And that's really important, really important. But at the same time, I think, I kind of thought that well-being was about eating the right diet and exercising so that you could push and push and push and push, so that, you could push yourself at work and you could push yourself here and you can push yourself there. And I think now the knowledge that I've kind of gained in the last, let's say, 10 years is that, like, well-being is actually about allowing yourself that peace and that space as well. So it's really important to take that time out. It's really important to connect with yourself. It's really important to have that peace. And I even think it's really important to have that sometimes that time on your own, or those special moments for yourself. And I sort of see that sometimes the magic ingredient. And I think, the diet's really important and the exercise are really important, but they're almost like the sort of stepping stone to that deeper level of nourishment for yourself, if you know what I mean. And for me now more than ever, I think that for me is the kind of essence of the well-being. It's almost about allowing yourself to really take care of yourself on a deeper level and listen to yourself on a deeper level.
Yeah, and I think, this is one of the challenges for, and I'm talking particularly about women, obviously, on this call today, because, we are time pressed. We live in a fast-paced society. And, that brings me back again to this whole reason why many of us went into business ourselves, to work for ourselves in the first place, because somewhere deep inside there's this knowing, there's this impulse that life can be a different way. And, I think women are so intuitive. We know this at a very, very deep level, whereas society has kind of created a situation where we're not really tapping into that intuition anymore. And I think, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to chat with you today, because I feel very strongly that we know that what we've been doing isn't serving us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's this calling, and it's getting louder and it's getting stronger and it's getting clearer that we need to get back to really being more in tune with our bodies. And I loved what you said, your definition of well-being like 10 years ago. I mean, I guess that was my definition this time last year about making sure that I was eating the right food and exercising. And there was very, very little attention anywhere else. I would, I'd make a little bit of time for myself to perhaps journal or meditate, but I wasn't embodying that as part of my well-being practice. It was disassociated. So I'm so glad that you shared that with us. But, I'd love to go right back to your story. How did you actually, you used to work in PR?
Yes, I know.
And so how did you end up becoming a naturopath?
Well, this is it. I mean, to be quite honest with you, and I'm quite happy to share the personal side of my story, because I was in my early 20s and probably later 20s actually, and I was working in this PR company, and I was just thinking, well, I'm looking after myself well enough to be able to do sort of 12-hour days, and it's all going to be worth it in the end. And I just saw people being so sort of ill after sort of long-term stress, and I saw people having so many alcohol problems that I thought, well, I'm never going to end up like that. I'll always stop before I get to that stage. But what actually happened to me was that my period stopped. So for a whole 12 months, I didn't have a period at all. And I just sort of thought, I wonder what's going on. And I went to the gynecologist, and I did all these various different things, and nobody could really find that there was anything wrong. And I just thought, I'm 27, my period stopped. I will want to have children at some point. This is not right. And I think that kind of started to inspire me to start thinking, well, actually, I need to know more about this. I'd always, let's say, dabbled and had an interest, but I just thought I need to understand what's happening. I really need to understand what's going on with my body, because somehow, I think on a deeper level, it was almost a bit like you were talking about how we go into that sort of drive mode. I'd kind of dissociated with that kind of feminine side of myself, pushing that kind of masculine side of myself, thinking I need to push. But what I think happened on a kind of hormonal level was that because my adrenal glands were working so hard, which affects your kind of hormone level, your sex hormone level, because of an increase in a rise of a hormone called cortisol, which has a significant impact on how well your ovaries are functioning and your sex hormones. I literally think I was just so stressed and in such a constant state of drive mode that my body just basically thought, well, we need to prioritize going into this kind of drive mode all the time, and we can't really prioritize, the kind of ovaries and the reproductive system, so we'll just stop for now. And the really interesting thing was, I then decided, I started reading more and more, and then I then decided this is what I need to do. I need to sort of teach myself, and I need to share this with other people, because this is really important, and I'm seeing this happening a lot with other people. So I then made this leap just after I got married, bless my husband, to start a degree, and I went through a massive journey doing the degree myself. But what was so interesting was virtually almost as soon as I started the degree, my periods came back. So I saw this as a kind of really important sign on a much deeper level that I was on the right path.
Yes. And
then actually, in the middle of doing my degree, I had my daughter. So that started an even bigger sort of journey for me. It then took another couple of years to finish my degree, but it was such an important part for me, because it then sort of made my learning even wider about, learning how we need to balance our different roles, and what do we need to do to be able to kind of fulfill all the different roles and give what we need to give, but also give to ourselves. And I think the biggest learning point for me was at the final year of my degree. And I think, again, I probably came inches away from a burnout again. And what I suddenly realized on a kind of, and I can't call it any other word, but a soul level, is that I'm not going to be okay if I'm trying to make everybody else okay all the time and I'm not giving anything back to myself. If I give back to myself on a much deeper level, then I can be okay for everybody else. And it was almost like that was a huge turning point for me. Maybe the start of a much more, without want for a better word, but kind of recognition of the kind of spiritual importance within health and well-being, as well as the kind of nutrition and structural side of things as well. And I guess from that point on, once you've come over something like that, there's almost like a deep thing within you that will never let you get back to that place in quite the same way. There's almost like a survival mechanism that's been switched on, or, you know, something. And I guess it just felt so important to me that I just find that I'm more and more drawn to kind of going through that process or sharing that process with other people, and that's kind of what brings me to my work, I guess, mainly.
And you're absolutely amazing at what you do. I know I've been on the receiving end, and thank you so much for sharing your story as well. I absolutely know that there will be women listening, joining us, you know, who are really nodding away in agreement, really, really resonating with everything that you've said there as well. I think that's just such a fabulous story, and I also believe that we need to be sharing these stories more and more, because we're not in isolation. We think we are. We think we're the only one going through stress or burnout or whatever it is. And I think, you know, the more we share these stories, the sooner, as a society, as women, as a collective, as a whole, we will be able to teach, you know, as you are, you know, that there is another way of being. And it's okay. It's absolutely okay. But at the same time, we're all on our own paths. You know, we have to experience a lot of this for ourselves.
We do, and I think the other part of the journey that I think, and I don't know if it's just for me or it's for everybody else, but there's a massive part of, for women who are very entrepreneurial and very, you know, talented women, there's a big element that I've found of not allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. And I think part of the thing that I'm really passionate about is actually letting people realize that it's okay to be vulnerable, and actually vulnerability is such an important part of our human experience and who we are, that it's something that should be kind of nurtured and allowed, and not sort of drummed out of us or made us feel weak for kind of experiencing it. It's really, really important, because I think it's a kind of transformational experience. It's part of the kind of evolution, if you know what I mean.
Definitely.
So that's the message I always want to share as well. Don't be scared of vulnerability.
And I love that as well. And I think, you know, as women, if we're able to share our vulnerabilities, we're giving a really great message to our children as well. And, you know, hopefully as that moves down the ancestral line, you know, there will come a time where it's absolutely okay, absolutely okay, you know, for us to really open up and share those vulnerabilities with a lot more ease than how we perhaps are feeling today. So one of the things that I, you know, have always talked about to my clients is very much about serving from your saucer. So, you know, just as an analogy here, you have a cup and a saucer, and we need to fill ourselves up, look after ourselves, and, you know, allow that filling to absolutely overflow over the top of the cup into the saucer. So our cup stays full, and then we can serve from our saucer. But I'd love to hear from you how best we can really look after ourselves, Kate.
Top tips,
Yeah, kind of, you know, I know everybody's on their own journey, so, you know, whatever you're going to say is going to resonate with somebody, and I know we can't absolutely cover everything, but what I'm thinking at the moment, there's a lot of women in pain, whether physical, emotional, or whatever. And, you know, we're a good starting point. I think that's probably the best thing, you know. So,
you know, this is, so I guess because I'm a naturopath, sometimes it's the naturopathic philosophies that speak out to me very strongly, but it's something that I've kind of noticed that not just naturopathic. It feels that it comes, this sort of philosophy is embedded in so many of the kind of older philosophies. And I think basically there's things like sunshine, light and air is a really good place to start, for example. So for me, it's remembering that as humans, we've always been really connected to nature, and you know, our cycles and our systems are very much like guided by, you know, the seasons and the cycles of the moon and things like that. So actually, sort of remembering to be connected to nature sometimes, to just get out and appreciate some of the beauty that's around us. It's not just about, you know, obviously it's wonderful to have a sunny day, but it's sort of embracing the different seasons, the different days and things like that. And sometimes just finding that moment, you know, just to stop and pay attention to something beautiful in nature is really important. But what they've shown also on a kind of physiological level is that when you kind of do that, it helps to almost reset the nervous system into the slightly more calm, a slightly more grounded part of the nervous system. So it's not just that it's good for us on a kind of soul level, but it's kind of good for us on a physiological level, and it's accessible and easy to everybody. So I think, you know, one top tip is try to connect with nature, try to get outside, try to sort of, you know, have that chance to just appreciate some of the beauty that's around us.
I love that. I really love that.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things that I say with a lot of my clients very much is, you know, we always talk about we haven't got time. Well, you know, let's make time. And, you know, I talk to my clients about working in, you know, that they need to work out what works for them. But for me, a 90-minute cycle is really nice. And then I literally, you know, get up, stretch, go out into the garden, even if it's just for a few moments, and just sort of look at what's changed since the day before. And, you know, you may say, well, things don't really change. They only change seasonally. They don't. They change every day. One day it may be wet, you know. So, you know, I'm so with you on this one as well. And thank you also for sharing about how it can really reset the nervous system on a physiological level as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going on to say something else.
Oh no, well I was just gonna say what's so interesting is that even with sort of like scientific studies, they've showed that even having a beautiful picture of nature in your room, for example, to look at and kind of just spend a moment when you're sitting at your desk and looking at it, just thinking, isn't that beautiful? And it could be a tree or a sunset or a picture from your holiday or something that like evokes positive memories. But even that they found has a really positive effect. So, you know, if you can't always sort of spend 5 minutes or, you know, going outside, but even just having a picture is quite amazing as well. But obviously outside's always best.
I love that. So no excuses.
No excuses. I'm not going to let you get away with it. No, not at all. But yeah, and the other thing, I guess, you know, just taking time to rest and sleep is really important as well, because, you know, like we've touched on the adrenal glands before, and really they're so important, and they're under a bit of challenge from kind of everything from, you know, when we're eating diets that don't really agree with us to, you know, stress and caffeine and kind of pharmaceuticals and all sorts of things. So whatever we can do to kind of nurture our adrenals on a kind of level as well is quite important. So you're trying to get sleep, trying to get some good restful sleep and good sort of sleep hygiene, so making sure that you're not trying not to work on the computer past sort of 10 o'clock at night, and you have a good hour or so before you go to sleep, you know, away from kind of technology, and those sorts of things are really important because they will, you know, impact the quality of your sleep. And it's not that you have to have sort of like 10 hours a night, but it's just trying to get sort of 7 to 8 good quality hours of sleep a night will really, really help. So I guess that's another top tip.
Yeah, Sorry. Can I just ask a little bit around here as well, because I hear everything that you're saying about sleep as well, but also rest. You know, so many of us are pretty manic in our approach to life.
Yeah.
Keep going, driven.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'd love for you to share just a little bit about your thoughts around taking some time out during the working day. Do you have any thoughts around that? I did something really quite cheeky yesterday.
Which we do.
I was feeling really tired yesterday in the afternoon. It was about 1:30, and I went to bed during the day. And there was a part of me that actually felt guilty. But when I woke up, I was like, whoa, yeah, I could do this. Nothing. I'd achieved everything that I'd wanted to. I went back and I did another hour's work afterwards. But it was just like my body was telling me. I really, listened to what it was saying. But I think that a lot of women have, as I did still yesterday, that guilt. I must be doing something. Just wondered if you had any thoughts around that you could share with us, Kate.
Yeah, I do, and I really do, because it's interesting that you talked about the time that you felt tired as well. So with the way that our body works is we've got something called the circadian rhythm, and it's regulated by hormones, particularly like the hormone cortisol, which it often gets a bad name for being the kind of chronic stress hormone. And when it's too high and over a prolonged period, it's not good for the health. But cortisol plays a really important part in the body by regulating our circadian rhythm. So cortisol rises in the morning to get us up, and then in the afternoon it slowly starts to tail off, which is often why people get that kind of after lunchtime dip. So there's two things that I think are really important. The first thing is to make sure that you're snacking regularly to keep your blood sugar levels nice and steady throughout the day. And I think the other thing, like you touched on, is listening to yourself. So, making sure that you get those moments of rest. And it may not be that you get that chance to have a little nap, and obviously that's lovely if you can from time to time. But I think for me, a great way getting the rest almost is I often say to people to just tune into your breathing a couple of times a day and really think, how am I breathing? Am I breathing slowly? Am I holding my breath? How does my breath feel? Because by almost bringing your consciousness to your breath for a couple of moments, again, it's almost giving your system that kind of message to relax a little bit. Because I think that when we're really busy and we're kind of in that drive mode, we actually hold ourselves a lot. We hold our breath, we hold our muscles, and all of those things are going to be using our energy because we're just in that state of, kind of holding yourself. So actually, if you can have those a few minutes, a couple of times a day where you're checking in with your breath and just thinking about how you're breathing, you're almost building in sort of like little rests at several points during the day. I think what you touched on is so important as well, and goes back to the adrenals again, is that, there's only so far that you can kind of push, and at some point you kind of just need to your body and do take that time out to rest where you can, because you really will reap the rewards in the longer term in terms of your adrenal health and even to the extent that cortisol levels are too high, what it impacts another hormone called your DHEA hormone, a hormone that's kind of seen as the kind of well-being hormone, but also the kind of hormone that keeps you looking younger. So, there's that other benefit from that perspective. If you're getting proper rest and you're not sort of pressurizing your adrenal glands too much so that your cortisol is not going too high, your DHEA levels, so that's really like your well-being hormone will be much better. Wow. I think it's really important.
I think so too, and I think this to me comes back to this whole sharing the vulnerabilities bit as well. It's like it's okay if we feel tired during the day. We don't have to keep pushing ourselves all the time.
No.
And just because we may see our friends and our colleagues doing X, Y, or Z doesn't mean to say we have to as well. We are all individuals, and we need to really learn to tune into our bodies. I think that's actually probably one of the biggest challenges, Kate, is sometimes we hear that message, that little voice, or we get that little nudge and we think, no, I'll be okay. And we keep going. And I think, this is something that I did. I absolutely, just was getting the nudges, was hearing the voice, but I just no, I'll be okay, I'll be okay. And in the end, I did make myself quite poorly. However, I just wondered if there's any thoughts and advice around, I don't even know, it's just, I kind of would like some words to, from your point of view about, how silly we can be sometimes by ignoring ourselves, and, the importance of listening to our intuition. We've all got it.
Yeah.
Any thoughts around that at all?
Yeah, I think you're so right, Alison. I really do believe, and I see it so much. I really can't tell you how much I see it with people that, clients that come to visit me. Is everybody has an innate wisdom about what it is that they really need, and I really see that in the work that I do, is that really actually it's almost just creating a space for people to listen to themselves, or really understand and hear that kind of intuition, because people really do have, on that deeper level, you do have the answers yourself. It's all there. Like, it's just remembering. And I think, unfortunately, perhaps part of the journey is kind of getting to that stage where you actually have to stop and listen, and in some ways it's a beautiful place to have reached, and in other ways it's a shame sometimes that we have to push ourselves so hard to do that. But I really would recommend for people to listen before they have to, before the consequences become more severe, if you know what I mean. But at the same time, once you have sort of tuned in and you are listening more, then there's an amazing capacity for the body to sort of start to regenerate or rebalance and re-find kind of health, if you know what I mean. So it's just creating that kind of opportunity, and it is just, it's really important. And I think that's the other thing, is that by kind of opening up, as you have and people are doing, it creates a bigger connection with other people, so that you are sharing this really vital experience with other people. And I think through kind of that connection with other people, that's an incredible resource for sort of health and well-being as well. And I think that's really important.
I think so too. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that as well. There was, there was something else that was just, you're firing lots of little neurons in my brain at the moment. There was something in there as well about, also when we pay more attention to our health, that we're more likely to be able to deal and cope better with the challenges that life throws at us. As well, because just because we're looking after our well-being doesn't mean to say we're suddenly not going to have any of life's curveballs coming our way. But that was just sort of something else that was just coming up for me. It just does mean that we will be more well prepared for dealing with those challenges as well, and being able to be of more service to others, and to be able to support other people.
That's it. And I also think there's a word that comes up for me a lot, and it's about trust. And I think that when you go through a process like that, and I guess it's about kind of this empowerment and trust with yourself. And I think when you develop this deeper trust of yourself and this deeper knowing of yourself, then it's almost like life will throw those curveballs at you, and it's not that everything's predictable or that you can control everything, but you've got that level of, you can trust. If you can trust yourself, then that's a really remarkable thing, and I think that's a very empowering thing on so many levels.
And I think that's definitely been part of my journey too, Kate, and I have been surprised at how much I've been able to strengthen that trust, and how deep it goes. So that's really, really beautiful. It's a very strong,
it's a resource. We are our main resource, if you know what I mean. I think when you realise that there's this inner strength and this inner trust within you that just it's almost like we disconnect from it, and it's about kind of reconnecting with it somehow, and then really listening to it about what's really right for you, what do you really need at this moment or this particular time. And often it's a surprise. I'm constantly surprised. But, that's part of the beauty of it, because it's not something that necessarily your head tells you what you need. It's something that your heart or your kind of gut instinct more tells you that you need, or your intuition. And it's not always what you expect, but quite often it's really quite right. So, yeah.
And how do you think we could start to learn the practice of trust?
I think that's really interesting. I think there's quite a few different ways to explore it.
And I love that straight away, because we're all different, aren't we? So
I think we're all different. I think you're absolutely right. We're all really different, and so we'll all find our ways of doing it. But I guess part of it, for me, about really kind of, I think part of it is not over-identifying with the ego. So that's one of the things that I've learned, is when something happens and I'm reacting to it, I think, where am I responding about this from? Is it from my ego, or is it from my heart? So that puts a very different kind of interpretation of things straight away on it, and you can see things from a different perspective. So I think for me personally, I can only speak for me personally, but a big part of it has been about removing my ego from things, from situations or from reactions, or trying to, because it's difficult. The ego creeps in, and it's not that the ego is a bad thing at all. It's an important part of us. But I think that the ego is very much the part of self that constantly criticizes, that constantly says you've got to do this, or catastrophizes. If you don't do this, X, Y, and Z will happen. If you don't do this, it will be the end of the world. If you don't push yourself further, everything's going to fall apart. If you don't, that's the kind of, in a way, the ego is sometimes the fear. So I think a massive part of the journey is about letting go of the fear and just being, I don't know how, and I don't know why, and I'm not sure what the result is going to be, but somehow I know it will be okay, and that's kind of part of the trust, in a way. It's kind of the heart, letting the heart have more, letting the heart be involved more than the mind, if you know what I mean. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, but that's probably the essence of it for me, I think.
I think that's really beautiful as well, and we can apply this to any situation in our life, whether it's our business or a challenge that comes up in our personal lives as well. I know that I've really kind of used my entrepreneurial journey to really explore my relationship with trust in many ways. And you probably would have imagined that it would have been more coming from the from my personal life, but it's actually been, because of my journey in creating Winning Women, that I've actually, learnt or become open to learning more about the process of trust and having faith too. So, I think everything that we're talking about here, from, what we're eating right through to how we're looking after ourselves, to, our thoughts and our feelings, it's all so incredibly relevant to who we're being today. Brilliant. Oh, Kate, I've really, really loved chatting with you. There's one thing that I'm really aware that we have talked about, but we haven't kind of labelled it, and that is the triad of health. Now, yes. I know we've kind of touched on this in the call because I have a little, obviously, insight into it, but I just wondered if you would be able to very quickly, sort of as we start to wind up now, kind of clarify that and share with our listeners really, how you see those 3 points and what they are. If we could just clarify them again.
Yeah, of course. So for me, it's a real anchoring point for sort of like health and well-being, and it's a really useful tool to also sort of kind of reflect at where things are for you in terms of like your health and well-being. And basically the triad of health is one part is, it's like you imagine a triangle, and one part is the kind of mental, emotional and spiritual side of it. The other part is the kind of biochemical part. And so that's from sort of like what you're eating, and so your nutrition to sort of like how the hormonal system's working, you know, sort of on that kind of physiological level. And then the other side of it is kind of like the structural, the kind of body, and, you know, that's from sort of exercise to sort of doing things like yoga or Pilates or things like that kind of use your body. Your body was always used to being used so much more than we use it now, and it responds so well to it. And so for me, I can't possibly claim to have been the first person that talked about the triad of health. It's really at the essence of kind of naturopathy. But for naturopaths and within naturopathic philosophy, it's really about sort of ensuring that you've got this balance between the three different aspects. And it's not saying that, you know, that your life has to be completely pure in every single way, and that, you know, you're kind of doing everything really, really well. It's just making sure that each point is supported in some way, so that you can really work towards that kind of balance. So, you know, whatever it is that resonates for you, but, you know, for example, kind of eating nutritionally dense food. So, you know, making sure that you're getting your greens and your avocados and your lots and lots of nutritionally really, really beneficial kind of foods. That you're really looking at kind of whole foods and cutting out the sort of refined sugars and, you know, the wheats and the caffeines and things like that where possible. So that's the kind of biochemical, and it's quite amazing how, given the right nutrition, the body really will kind of, it makes quite a remarkable difference to health and well-being. And then, you know, obviously there's that other side of it, almost like, you know, looking after the structure is almost that kind of embodiment part. It's, you know, realizing that your body is your body, you're a body and a mind. You know, it's not about the mind. You must look after, you know, the body is important. It's important to do those things, you know, like whether it's just going for a walk or whether it's doing the Pilates class or even just doing some kind of stretches in the morning, those sorts of things, just to kind of, you know, nourish your body a bit. And then obviously the mental, emotional. And I kind of almost sometimes feel that the other two are almost like the grounding parts that you need to then be able to kind of, to then kind of be able to sort of like open up or explore the kind of mental, emotional side in a way. Because when you've looked after yourself on those two kind of levels, then that's that sort of opportunity that you have to sort of, you know, explore that kind of other side. You know, things like meditation or, you know, any of those sorts of things that you find really resonate with you on a deeper level, that kind of nourish you on a deeper level. That's that kind of opportunity. But yeah, it's almost that you can't really look at one without looking at the other. And I think that's kind of like the essence of how you work as a naturopath, is that you can't just work on somebody's diet. You can't just work on somebody on a structure, you know, thinking about the structural level, and you can't just work with somebody thinking about the mental, emotional level. You know, it's that bigger picture. That's how we function, you know, as a human being, and
as a whole.
That's why it's so important. Yeah, it's the whole. That's it. That's exactly right. It's the whole.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because I was really aware that as we were chatting, we were kind of talking about these three areas, but I wanted to really just come back to that to make it really more helpful and understandable for people listening in as well. Kate, we're going to have to wrap up very, very soon, but if people wanted
that went
to...
so quickly.
I know, it always does, and you know, if people wanted to connect with you, if they would like to use your services, where can they find you?
So I'm based at the Naturopathic Centre in Winchester. So it's just outside of Harsley, and I'd always be really, really happy to see anybody there. But I'm also very happy for you, if you'd like to share my personal email with people, I'd be very happy to hear from people. I'm planning some workshops, really talking about the kind of triad of health and helping people to explore that. So in the kind of new year, I'm going to be starting some workshops and potentially some sort of juicing courses and things like that. So if people kind of want to email me to join the mailing list or anything like that, I'd be really happy to hear from them.
Super. Kate, thank you so much for your time. I know that you've just, shared some really, really great little golden nuggets there that are going to really get people. I think a lot of this stuff also, we actually kind of know quite a lot of it, but we need to be reminded of it, don't we?
Yeah.
So thank you for being that reminder to a lot of people, but also I know there are going to be people that have heard this for the very first time today as well. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you
so much.
And thank you also for tuning in. Bye for now.
Yes, thank you.